Hey, welcome to Growing a Fruitful Brand. I thought that was good.
That was great. That's great.
Hey, welcome to Growing a Fruitful Brand, where we discuss how to create and grow a brand that makes the world a better place for you, your customers, and your employees. I'm Ben Lueders, founder and art director of Fruitful Design and Strategy, and I'm joined by my business partner and brand strategist, Lulla. And today, on our very first episode, we want to tackle the question, what is a brand? But before we do that, I just want to kind of address the potential elephant in the room. I know we have an actual elephant figurine over there on the shelf. That's not what I'm talking about. But obviously, inflation is going crazy. Lots of people say that we may be going into a recession. Some say that we're already in a recession. Why are we launching a show about branding as we go into a recession, Raj?
Yeah, it'd be reasonable to ask if we were crazy for doing this right now.
Yeah, but isn't this a non-essential thing, you know?
I think a lot of people might think that, but the truth is that tough economies focus great companies. They help great companies decide what they're best at, innovate new products, reach customers in new ways. And so branding is actually more essential during difficult economic times because companies need to really get to the core of what works about their company so that people don't lose their jobs, so that you can continue to drive value and still treat your customers well all at the same time.
Absolutely. And it is a time that a lot of other companies tend to get this wrong and start going backwards there.
Yeah.
and cut back on marketing, cut back on branding. And so it is a really cool opportunity to stand out in a crowded field.
Yeah,
So,
adversity accelerates the evolution in the market. And so it's an opportunity for you to look at what works in your company and what doesn't and decide how to evolve for the future. This is the same thing that we saw in the pandemic, but it's different because in the pandemic, it was nobody can get outdoors and buy our product. And now it's much more, people may not have the same amount of money to buy our product. So similar challenges, but different circumstances. And so your response to them has to be different as well.
Awesome. Well, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I had to deal with the elephant, but now I'm excited to dive in. And, in order to have a whole show about branding, we need to talk about what is a brand. It may seem a little bit nebulous or ethereal, or maybe even a little bit pretentious to some that don't, deal in this world every day. And so I just want to open it up. Raj, what is a brand?
Yeah, at the most basic level, your brand is your company's identity. And another word that you might want to swap in there for identity is reputation. A brand is an identity or a reputation. And it combines your visual identity, your messaging, your customer experience. And these are things that span the entire life of your customer's journey, from being first aware that your company even exists, through your marketing, through your sales, through your purchase, through your delivery, all the way to the point where they recommend you to their friends or don't. Your brand, your reputation, your identity extends through that entire process from, again, awareness all the way through recommending you to their friend because they had a happy experience with you.
So Raj, when I hear words, or when others hear words like reputation, identity, it just seems so, hard to put your finger on, and maybe hard to control. We like to be able to control our outcomes, and it seems pretty clear to me that there's kind of this conflict between these seemingly internal things and maybe these external things that we can actually manipulate and control and understand that can maybe change the way that people perceive our brand identities. And so Raj kind of already alluded to some of these. The three that we want to tackle today, and these are the ones that we interact with every day running Fruitful Design and Strategy. It's your visual identity, your messaging, and your customer experience. So let's just take them one at a time.
Yeah.
And talk about them. The first one, of course, is the best one. This is the world that I live in. And so when you think of, a recognizable famous brand like Apple or Nike or Starbucks, immediately there's some images that pop into your head because we are visual beings. Like, image is king. And so, with Nike, that swoosh just flashed in front of your eyes. the apple in the Apple logo, the siren with Starbucks. And so this leads a lot of people to falsely think that a brand is a logo.
Sure. Yep.
It's not. It's a very important part of your brand, though. And it's a very important part of particularly your visual identity.
Yeah, the fact that you can just mention those brands, and we don't even have to put them up on the screen for somebody to get that mental image of that. That means that those brands are taking up real estate in our brains completely for free. No matter how many Nike boxes we've seen or swishes on the side of shoes or driven by so many Starbucks on the road, all of those impressions have created in our mind this icon, this image of what this company is. And they don't have to pay for that. It's like a billboard in your mind. And that's pretty darn impressive. It really does matter to how your customers remember you, especially when you think of scaling that down to smaller brands. Even companies that are successful, but in comparison are small. You could be a $10 million company and be really small compared to Apple and Starbucks. And so, for smaller brands, having your customers remember you is really, really important. Because if they may want to do business with you, they may see your storefront, or they may run across an online advertisement, and then the world gets distracting. And if they don't have a way to mentally capture who you are, then it's just going to be like ships passing in the night. You maybe had a chance, but it's moved on now.
Well, and we said earlier, it's a reputation, and that immediately implies remembrance, and it's like what you think about it when it's not around, what you remember when it's not around. And this is one of the reasons why, as a graphic designer, by training, we always kind of cringe when someone reaches out like, "Hey, I just need a quick logo." It's just and it's like, there's a way in which you could make a logo that is fast or cheap potentially, but it's such an important thing. It's just one of those things that has such an amazing potential to convey so much about you, who you are. If it's your identity, if it's your reputation, that mark alone can really help just set the tone, for what you want to be, remembered as.
It'd be somewhat similar to asking for your barber to give you just to need a quick, cheap haircut, and it's like, I mean, he can do it. It's you're gonna look like you just got out of boot camp probably, but
that's right.
Your face is part of how people remember you, and if you want them to take a little bit more time and be a little bit more thoughtful about about the image that they're creating for you, then asking for fast and cheap might not necessarily be the best approach to it. Now, if you're part of the Buzz Cut crew, great, good for you. That's right. Nothing wrong with it, but that's part of your brand.
You're part of the basic training brand. My dad was a part of that brand. And so kind of related to the actual logo mark are maybe some of those other things that if you're not a designer or a brand strategist, you probably don't notice as much, but things like fonts, colors, textures, imagery choices, even the way that imagery is edited, video is edited, all these things. It's funny, I was thinking before we started recording, I say Apple and immediately the Apple logo flashes in your mind. But if I, were to ask the common lay person what font Apple uses, you probably wouldn't be able to, most people probably wouldn't be able to articulate exactly. But I bet if you saw a font that is completely different than Apple, it would stand out. You maybe wouldn't be able to, not everyone would be able to articulate why. But it's interesting how some of those visual aspects, as simple as the typefaces, the colors, et cetera, really can help convey just a certain identity and reputation for your brand.
So logos really matter. We talked about them taking up real estate in your brain, but also how the logo is formed matters a lot. It communicates a ton about your brand. For example, it can communicate whether you are a B2B company or a B2C company. Something that is on the shelf at Target is going to look a lot different from an IT solutions company. The audience demographics that are you going after somebody young or somebody older? Are you going after a specific gender? Are you Are you in a particular industry, whether it be, groceries, agriculture, medicine, all those things. And I bet even just me saying those things brings to mind logos that you've seen, whether it be, the major hospital system in your town, or it's the people who fix your computers. They all have logos that just kind of make you think that they're in the industry that they're in, and it communicates a ton about the industry that they're in, who they're trying to reach, and sometimes even the quality of the product itself, whether it's a lower priced product or a higher value product. All can be kind of determined through choices in the shape, style, fonts, all those things of the logos.
Yeah, it's interesting how when it comes to like visual stuff, we all sometimes subconsciously, unknowingly, we're playing an association game.
Yeah.
Right? We immediately think like, oh yeah, this brand reminds me of this other brand or this other thing I've seen. And so I know that it's going to be this kind of an experience, or it's this kind of a thing. And again, for most of us, this is a totally subconscious thing. And for some, it may seem like, really, is that really how it works? But this stuff is happening at a really, really deep level. And it does inform our buying habits. It informs, who we do business with. And so, it may seem somewhat, unimportant, but it actually really kind of can drive and inform a whole lot with our business.
Yeah.
All right. So that's visual identity in a nutshell. Now it's time to look at the next part, which is arguably Raj's favorite part of external brand elements, and that is messaging. Raj, what do you mean by messaging?
So all of your marketing should come from a clear statement about the problem you solve for your customer. In fact, it was purposeful that I said messaging here instead of marketing, because marketing, we can get a lot lost in the tactics of it. Are we running Facebook ads, or are we doing search ads? Are we doing TV commercials? All those things. And each of those has questions about budget and style and kind of all those things. But all of them really boil down to, what message are you communicating to your customer? Now, certainly those media affect the message.
Yeah, they're all great. Nothing wrong with them.
Yep.
They have their place.
And you communicate in different ways across those things. The way that you would run a Super Bowl ad is a lot different from the way that you'd run a social media ad.
Right.
Sometimes. And the amount of time that you have, whether it's visual or just audio, all of those things affect how you put your message out there. But at the end of the day, your brand needs to have a clear story that it's telling about the problem that you solve for your customer and how they can experience success based off of doing business with you. And so that's why we chose messaging instead of marketing here. There are other things that go into messaging, like your brand position, like the value that you drive. All of that determines the words that you say to your customer, and the images that you put out there to accompany those words as well.
Absolutely. So Raj, one thing that comes to my mind is, when it comes to branding, what makes, helps convey trust a lot with a brand is how consistent it is.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that comes to mind when we think of messaging is having a consistent brand voice.
Yeah.
How would you talk to that? How would you explain that?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different types of brand voices out there. You have the Red Bull kind of voice where it's the cartoon and gives you wings, and it's kind of silly and irreverent. It's not the kind of brand voice that you get from Starbucks even, so two different drinks, but,
right.
And both caffeinated, but Red Bull, it wants to be sponsor of, extreme sports and have the car with the giant Red Bull can on top. Yeah. Starbucks wants to be more associated with, you grabbing a cup of coffee on your way into work, or maybe treating yourself after, after you've put the kids down to bed and you want to meet up with your friends and have kind of another living room type of place to gather in. So very different voices, very different images for each of those brands.
Yeah, and so, similar to the visual identity part, if you you heard a brand that you're familiar with suddenly talking in a completely different voice, if you saw a Starbucks ad that sounded like Red Bull or vice versa, And again, it's probably one of those things that maybe you wouldn't be able to say exactly what's wrong without thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't feel right,
It'd be like Apple. Let's take a real extreme here. It'd be like Apple speaking in Walmart's brand voice.
Right.
If you
always low prices.
yeah, exactly. If you drove by an Apple store with these giant, beautiful glass windows, which if you've read the Steve Jobs book, you know that they actually had to like specially manufacture hinges to hold doors that were that heavy and made out of that much and that thick of glass.
Walmart's doors, they did not do the same. Spoiler alert.
It's a whole experience that was completely designed and manufactured. And if you drove by there and had a giant yellow smiley face on the front of the Apple store and it said everyday low prices,
that's right.
You go, what? Like,
now, if Apple
are they going out of business?
Lower all their prices all of a sudden, I mean, I'd be there for it, but it's probably never going to happen.
So yeah, speaking with the wrong brand voice would very much confuse customers and could do a significant amount of damage to your brand.
So here at Fruitful, we take messaging very seriously. I started the company as a graphic designer and creating, visual identities. Partnered up with Raj a number of years ago. And since that time, we kind of went all in on this story brand messaging framework. Do you want to explain that a little bit, Raj?
StoryBrand is a marketing framework that uses the power of story, the same principles that have been used for thousands of years to tell heroic stories, everything from Star Wars to Harry Potter to Hunger Games. Pretty much any movie you've seen or book you've read follows some version of the hero story, especially if it's a heroic journey. And it just makes it easy for you to distill the 7 pieces of your messaging that need to be right for your customer to know that they're shopping at the right place, that they found the right business to work with. Because what it does is it takes your customer and places them as the hero of the story. A lot of times businesses will center themselves as the hero of the story. They'll talk about how amazing they are, the intellectual property that they have, or how much experience they have, or how many years they've studied to be a surgeon, or whatever it is. And they should be proud of those accomplishments.
Right. They're great. There's nothing wrong with them.
But just like in a great movie, the hero is somebody like Luke Skywalker who is on a planet that's dirt, and he's farming with his uncle, and then he gets called to a journey. He gets called to this heroic story, and he needs the help of a guide. And so Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's the one who's got all of those credentials. He's the one who studied to be a surgeon, or he studied the Force. He has all of the skills that Luke needs to go on his journey. And so that's where you are in relationship to your customer. Your customer is more that Luke, figure. He wants to be a hero. He wants to fight the Empire. Wants to honestly even just get off his planet and have an adventure. But there's things that hold him back. His family holds him back. His uncle wants him to stay and farm. There's the fact that he doesn't really know where to go or what to do. And then he meets this guide who tells him, hey, I've been there. I know exactly the problem that you're having. Here's this lightsaber, and here's a plan. Study the Force, become a Jedi, then you will become the hero that you've been yearning to be. And when you position yourself there, you actually position yourself in more strength than when you position yourself as the hero, because heroes are weak. Luke is weak. In fact, one of the more biggest criticisms of Star Wars is that Luke is pretty whiny, especially through the first couple of movies, in dealing with all his problems. So you want to be that guide, not the hero. Let your customer be the hero, and you can help them get to where they're trying to go.
So first of all, I love that Raj always takes the story brand conversation right into Star Wars, because we're huge Star Wars nerds, and I'm sorry if anybody was left out of that. Star Wars is definitely worth the watch if you haven't seen it. But the second thing is, it's crazy to me just how counterintuitive this really is. Yeah. It is so hard to sometimes take a step back and try to see things from someone else's perspective. It's just so easy to try to center ourselves as the hero of the story, because that's what comes naturally. Yeah. And so recognizing that others think that way, and if you're able to get outside of that and recognize that, it's amazing what can happen when you position your messaging in that way.
Yeah, because we're actually experiencing the same thing our customers are experiencing.
Right.
We get up every day trying to provide for our families, trying to do the best we can at work, trying to be good people in our community.
We're
all
awesome.
Those things. We want to be the heroes of our own stories. And then where we get tripped up is that we think, great, these customers can help me on my journey. If they give me their money, then I can go do the thing that I'm trying to do. Whereas
that's a good tagline.
Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking about how they can make Starbucks more money or how they can, make Tide more money. What they're thinking is, I need to be energetic at work today, or I need the kids to not have grass stains on their soccer uniforms because that's not the kind of parent that I want to be, or that's not the kind of worker that I want to be, being sleepy at work and struggling. So they use those things to go on their heroic journey, just like they should use your business to go on their heroic journey. And so the real trick is getting them to understand how you help them go on that heroic journey. What problem are they having? Are they sleepy? Do they have grass stains on the uniform? Do they have problems with their IT? Do they need surgery? What thing do they need that you can solve for them? That's how you get them to identify that you can help them on their heroic journey.
Awesome. All right. So that's messaging in a nutshell. Let's move on to the next brand element we're going to talk about, and that is customer experience. So obviously, your visual identity, your messaging, it all plays a part in your customer experience, but customer experience is a little bit broader than that.
Yeah. We talk about brand as identity. Another way to say that is what promise you're making to your customers. And then we ask the question of do we keep that promise? And if we do keep that promise, in what way do we keep that promise? So a good example here is when you take the car to the mechanic and they fix the problem that's under the hood, and that's all great. But the mechanic that also vacuums out the car, maybe it will spray some air freshener in there so that your car is just nicer to drive after you've dropped it off with them, because they understand that, yes, that you came for a problem, but it's not always just enough to just fix the problem. They want you to enjoy driving again. They want you to be in your car so that eventually your car will need new tires, or maybe you want to, enhance your car in some way. And the better they make driving for you, the more business they'll get from you, and the happier that you'll be to give it to them. That's keeping your promise in an excellent way and going above and beyond. Now, that's not true for every brand. Sometimes you're a value brand, and part of that promise is, hey, this is a no frills experience. This is what you get at Costco or Aldi, and things are out on pallets, and you don't want the above and beyond experience because you want the price, and that's okay. That's a great brand position value to take. But if you're promising a premium experience and delivering a value experience, then people are not going to like the way that you keep your promise. It almost never goes the other way. You can always over deliver. Costco having delicious pizza and frozen yogurt for an insanely cheap price to feed your kids who maybe got cranky in the store. That's a value add. That's another experience that they can give to you. But if you're promising a high value experience and deliver a low value experience, then your customer is going to feel let down. They're not going to return for business. They're not going to recommend you to anybody else. Absolutely. And I was thinking about the analogy you gave earlier about the experience of going into an Apple store and the doors and the hinges and the experience that you get talking to someone at the Genius Bar or their checkout experience. Those all contribute to just your overall feeling and the overall reputation that company has in someone's life. Yeah, if you went to the Apple store and you got that CVS receipt that's, like a mile long and it's got 30 cents off a Snickers bar and a free flu shot and all that kind of stuff, then, it just would not fit the Apple experience. They wirelessly Zoom you an email receipt that's already tied to your Apple account, all of those things. And it's not even like a good, bad thing necessarily, right? And we've all experienced this where like my wife loves to start her grocery shopping
shopping at Aldi. And Aldi has its own kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know, like you've got to bag in your own stuff, and you kind of, you know what you're signing up for, but
Sometimes-
it has its own charm. And
Sometimes you need milk and rain boots in the same trip, and you want both of them to be very affordable. That's okay. Like it's great. It's just what that experience is. And it'd actually be weird if you went to Aldi and meat is $8 a pound and only organic and grass fed and all. That's the Whole Foods brand, and they want to do that, and that's great. Whereas if Whole Foods had $2.99 rain boots sitting next to their $8 a pound meat, then it would be confusing to the customer.
As we said earlier, your brand is your identity. It's your reputation. And although you can't make someone think a certain way about you, there are certain elements, these external elements that you can control that can help steer people in the right direction. And so just to recap, we have your visual identity, your messaging, and your customer experience. So to close, Raj has a little challenge for us.
So a lot of times with branding, we get just kind of stuck. We go, okay, well, what do we do with this information? We agree. Our visual identity matters, our messaging matters, the customer experience matters. So what do we do with that? I would recommend two things to take stock of your brand. Number one, try to put yourself in the shoes of your customer. Load up your website. Maybe don't do it at the office where you're kind of in your element. Maybe do it at home, after the kids have gone to bed, or, you let the dog out for the night, or, whatever your situation is. Fire up the laptop and just look at your brand, look at your website. In fact, it'd be a good idea to maybe fire up the laptop and your phone. Is your website good in both of those places? And just try to look at it with fresh eyes. If you didn't know everything that you know about your business, what would you think about this business? About the way your logo looks, about how fast your website loads, about the words that are being said. If you were your customer and not you, if you didn't know everything about IT solutions, or if you didn't know all of the ins and outs of surgery or being a mechanic or whatever your industry is, then what would you think reading this website? Would you be confused, or would it be clear what problem you solve? Now, here's the challenge to take it to the next level. Actually ask someone who doesn't work for you, who isn't your wife or your husband, or sees you every day. You can ask your parents. You could ask somebody you go to church with, or another parent on the PTA, or whatever. Say, hey, you're not in our industry. You don't do what we do for a living. If you read our website, what would you think that it is that we do? What problem do you think it is that we solve? And do you think that we would actually do it? You can even ask questions like, how much do you think that this would cost? Just get these fresh eyes on your brand. There's so much you can do after that to, rehab that image if it needs anything, edit, tweak, all those kinds of things. But getting that fresh information, having the willingness to be honest with yourself and take stock of your brand, that's the first step to building a fruitful brand.
Thanks so much for joining us on our first episode of Growing a Fruitful Brand. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, follow, like, drop a comment, a review. We're so thankful for you coming along on this journey. Share this with someone else maybe that knows that leading a business is more than just making another dollar. It's about growing something good in this world.